In today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 of the most controversial players in today's game. Starting off with probably the most obvious on the list, we have Brad Marchand of the Boston Bruins. Now, if you're not a Boston Bruins fan, chances are you really do not like Brad Marchand. Marchand has done some very questionable things over the course of his career, whether it's hitting people low in the legs, making them flip over, and licking people and kissing people and stuff like that. Obviously, that isn't going to give you a good look in today's NHL with the fans or with your peers or even just anyone that's involved with the NHL in general. I really don't like the fact that Brad Marchand is this way, because if he wasn't, he would probably be a fan favorite amongst people because he's one of the best offensive guys in the league. I mean, this regular season, he only played in 68 games, but he put up 85 points. He could have had the potential to put up a 100-point season if he would have played in all 82 games, and over his postseason career, he has 60 points in 84 games with a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins, so he's a very, very solid player. He has 459 points over his career in 602 games. He's 30 years old, so he really is just putting a target on his own back when he does stuff like this. Obviously, you want guys to be chippy and get under the other team's skin, but there is a certain line that you do not cross with other teams, and Brad Marchand crosses that line multiple times throughout a season, so he's a fantastic player, but I would really like it if he would tone down some of the tactics that he uses to try and get out of the other team's skin and just try to be the best offensive player and all-around player that he can be, because we all know he's a fantastic player. Just some of the stuff he does is very questionable. Alexander Burrows is known as one of the NHL's most notorious divers over the past couple of years, and he really hasn't stopped doing that now that he's 37 years old. He still does cross the line and do some questionable things in today's game. Longtime member of the Vancouver Canucks, now playing on the Ottawa Senators. He's 37 years old, so I think it's time that he tones it down a bit. Obviously, recently that 10-game suspension for kneeing Taylor Hall was one of the most dangerous and just really bad plays that I've seen in a long time, because that was just such a very, very NHL player-like thing to do. Like, you don't knee a guy in the head when he's down, but Alex Burrows did that. He was suspended 10 games for that, so that is good. And now I think it's time Burrows just hangs up the skates. He only put up 14 points this past season, was a -8, and he really isn't the player that he used to be. And I think he's really just keep putting a target on his back, because if you're not a Canucks fan or if you're not involved with the Canucks, obviously you like him because he did great things with the Vancouver Canucks, obviously getting them to that Stanley Cup final with the Sedin twins in Luongo. But now those years are behind him, and now he's really still playing in the NHL. Not very good producing on the offensive end, but he really is still doing questionable things. So I think it's time Burrows hangs him up. I mean, he could probably still be a good bottom 6 forward, but not if he's going to do things that are going to cost your team, like getting penalties or getting suspensions, because if that's what he's going to do, I think it's just time we say goodbye to Alex Burrows. Next up, we have Nazem Kadri, who is probably on one of the most luxury contracts in the NHL for the team. Putting out 30 goals, and the contract that he's on is a very, very team-friendly contract. But after this postseason and the series with the Boston Bruins, he definitely has accumulated some more haters than he had in the past seasons. The past couple of years, he has been a controversial player, whether it's pulling out the beard of Joe Thornton during a fight or throwing that very vicious hit on Tommy Wingels in the postseason against the Boston Bruins that he was ultimately suspended for. He was just sticking up for Mitch Marner, but still, that hit really did cross the line a little bit, and you have to know when to hold yourself back. He is one of the best two-way players in the game today, in my opinion, a 30-goal scorer who is a fantastic defensive shutdown forward, but some of the stuff he does is very questionable sometimes. It seems like he's always in the middle of the scrums and in the middle of the dirty plays, so Nazem Kadri could probably tone it down a bit. You never want to lose the chippiness that you play with, but ultimately knowing when to stop and pull yourself back is a thing that NHL players have to have. And as a 30-goal scorer, who this guy has a lot of offensive potential, he really does need to tone it back a bit, because you don't want to put a target on your back. And when you play against teams, some of the grinders are going to just want to hurt you if you're known notoriously around the league for being a dirty player or controversial player. So that's why Nazem Kadri's on this list. Fantastic player, but sometimes doesn't know when to hold back. Next up, we have PK Subban of the Nashville Predators. Now, he doesn't usually do dirty things. Sometimes we'll see PK Subban cross the line, but why I think he's a controversial guy is because it's sometimes known around the league, and it comes out that he's not a good guy to play with, and he's not a good teammate, and he does some things to the crowds, like he's always taunting the crowd, and he just does, his celebrations are over the top sometimes. So just all around a controversial guy. If he's not on your favorite team, then maybe you're not a fan of him. Obviously, it didn't seem like he left Montreal in the best of terms, but obviously, he still does give back to the city of Montreal, so he is a good guy in that way. But on the ice and some of the stuff he does, maybe behind the scenes and in the locker room, obviously fighting with his teammates back in Montreal, like fighting with Thomas Plekanec. I mean, Thomas Plekanec seems like one of the most likable guys out there, and to start a fight with him, it seems like you have to be a bit of an agitator, so I don't know there, but obviously the things didn't come out as to why they were fighting. Obviously, things just get intense sometimes. But PK Subban certainly is a controversial player when it comes to the behind-the-scenes stuff and some of the over-the-top stuff he does on the ice. And lastly, we have Tom Wilson, the guy who inspired me to make this video. Whilst watching the Stanley Cup Finals last night, obviously we seen him lay that vicious hit on Jonathan Marchand that was late, and it was just a dangerous vicious hit in general. It's going to be interesting to see if he is disciplined by the league. Now, Tom Wilson is a guy that hasn't always been known for this, as he does have some good offensive skills. You know, obviously he plays with Alexander Ovechkin and Evgeny Kuznetsov, so to be able to play with them, you have to have a little bit of skill. But some of the stuff he does cross the line a lot, and throughout the playoffs, we have seen that a lot. It seems like every other series, we're seeing a headline that says, will the NHL discipline Tom Wilson? The NHL just has to be fed up with this guy. He's really putting them in bad situations, and you really need to know when to stop, because Tom Wilson is an important piece to the Washington Capitals, and if they're going to win the Stanley Cup and come back after this 1-0 series lead by the Vegas Golden Knights and come back and win this series, you're going to need Tom Wilson to be the agitator, but not be suspended and do greasy things that'll get you penalties, because he's a good net front presence. He scored a goal last night, off being a net front presence off a shot by Alex Ovechkin, so you need this guy in your lineup. You can't have him suspended and stuff like that, so Tom Wilson really does need to know when to cut it back and just know that your team needs you, and just doing stupid stuff and trying to get other players injured and stuff isn't always the way to go. There's a difference between being an agitator and being a dirty player, and sometimes Tom Wilson does look like a dirty player. Obviously, he is a good NHL player, but he just really needs to know when to tone it back, because if the Washington Capitals are going to want to win the Stanley Cup, they're going to need this guy in their lineup, as obviously he plays on the top line and plays a significant role for this team. So Tom Wilson needs to know when to cut it back, especially throughout these Stanley Cup playoffs so far. So that is going to wrap up the video. I hope everybody did enjoy. Make sure to let me know down in the comment section who you guys think are some of the most controversial NHL players in the game today. So with that being said, I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for some daily NHL content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.